Hey gamers, Maniac here with GameAccess.net doing a video. This is kind of like a love letter to all of you tabletop players or you Dungeons and Dragons players and stuff like that. I know you've looked at the title and you're probably thinking to yourself, really? Really? For those of you who might have watched some of my earlier Tales from IT, you'll know that my schooling education, meaning like high school, college, that sort of thing, middle school, did absolutely nothing for me education-wise to help me in the profession that I do for my life, which is information technology. And if anything, the stuff that I was told as I was growing up that would be bad for me, be it video games, and now we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, were actually infinitely more useful to me to help me with my chosen profession than all the combined schooling that I had over the course of 12 plus years, basically. Now, I already talked about video games. That's a previous video. We're not going to retread on old topics. But I didn't talk about Dungeons and Dragons because I didn't think I'd have to. But it kind of did happen, actually. And while I do actually have a lot of proof of this story, I can't show it for, I don't want to tread on anybody. I'm not under any NDAs as far as I know, but just like how you change names and stories and stuff like that, just to protect people that aren't privy to the fact that you're telling this story, I kind of wanted to do that here. So unfortunately, you'll just have to take my word for it. But I swear to you, I can back this up if pressed. So needless to say, in the video that I did previously, where I was talking about basically upgrading companies or assisting in the upgrade or setting the plans of a company's major upgrade, I had to basically go through a whole building floor by floor, wing by wing, and basically just look for all the network jacks. And it was a long job. It was not a super difficult job, but it was a time-consuming job. I think it took me about 1 to 2 weeks. I can't remember, somewhere between there. I would say probably around 1 to 2 weeks to complete the job. And I did have support, but I was mostly left to my own, which is good. The reason why they needed me to do this is because the building had undergone several renovations since it was initially built, and the building was probably built at least 20 years ago. And over the course of those 20 years, a lot had happened to it. Rooms that existed previously no longer existed. Desks that existed previously were no longer there. Cubicles were where offices should be, and offices were where cubicles should be. And so all the records that I had for where network jacks should be were basically 50-50 chances if they were actually there. Well, maybe 25-75, more likely it would be there. But things essentially were not adding up. And so this all needed to be rectified so that when a final team come in to actually do the hard work to basically make this network faster, they had to know where everything actually was, because they were all off-site people that were basically working on notes that were 20 years old. And they even told me flat out they had some rooms that they had set up that they had absolutely no plans for, or incomplete plans, or they have bits and pieces here and there. And so they were essentially relying on me. And don't get me wrong, they can do that. You're going to pay me to do a job. I'm going to do it. And I'm going to do it to the best of my abilities. And they certainly, so they called me up to do a job. I had not done a job like this before, but I was not incapable of doing it. And I was going to do it for them just like they wanted. I was going to make them happy, and they were happy with it. So basically, I was going to be their guy to do this job. And do it I would. And of course, there I am on the floor. They gave me a little cubicle for at least a couple of days. So and they gave me all the information that they had, and they gave me full laydown of the building. Granted, I had been vetted before then; they all knew me, and because I had done jobs there before. And so I just started working. They gave me what they had, and I had a pen and paper. This was before, I had upgraded to a tablet and pencil, Apple Pencil. And I started doing the job. And so you're probably saying to yourself, well, what does Dungeons and Dragons have to do with this? Did you ever see Raiders of the Lost Ark? I know you're probably saying, yeah, I've seen Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like I said, I was dealing with old information, and I was dealing with bad information, out of date information, not bad information, just out of date information, obsolete information. So the point of my job was to cross out what was fake, give a completely accurate, up to the minute, bits of information. Are these jacks where they're supposed to be? Check off where they were, mark down where they weren't, and mark down specifically if they were in use or not. Fine. Now, there is a game called Dungeons and Dragons that I had just started to play about a year prior. 5th edition. I started with 5th edition. There may be some of you out there that are older school than that, and that's fine. But I didn't get into D&D until the 5th edition came out. And as for any Dungeons and Dragons players that are out there, mapping is important. Sometimes you're provided a map, or the dungeon master will provide you a map for the location that you're in. But sometimes you're not provided a map. Maybe the dungeon master may allow you guys to use like a whiteboard or an erasable mat or something like that, or perhaps even grid lines for buildings. And I got a funny D&D story I could tell you guys about later about that sort of thing, so that people are aware of where their pieces are, where their players are on the game, in the game universe, so that they can move on to the next one, if you will. And so that we know where to move, where we're going, where the enemies are, at least the ones that we can see, so and so, such and such. And I had already absorbed all of that information prior to me doing this job. So as I'm working on these maps and I'm working on these charts, and I start getting a call for that there were a couple of rooms that had no maps. So here I am scribbling on all these like 20-year-old maps. I mean, don't get me wrong, they gave me fresh copies of them. Xerox, fresh Xeroxes of them. But they had some built, so I'm going building to building, room to room, essentially drawing out with a pen and paper, or a pencil and paper, just like I would in Dungeons and Dragons, how the room is shaped, where the network jacks are, and if they're in use or not. And essentially when that was all done, we tabulated it all down, and I submitted that to my employer, and that's basically that. Fast forward a couple months later, I was working for a smaller business, another part of the conglomerate. And we weren't upgrading the network. The network wasn't, but I was upgrading the computers. And of course, I had never been to this building before, and so I didn't know the laydown of it very well. So what I did instead was I basically drew up a map, because I was told maybe that might be something else. So I had drawn up a map, just like I would in Dungeons and Dragons. And I sent that picture to my superiors just so that they had reference for where everything was and where everybody was in the building. Again, it was a small building. It was about 12 employees, nothing too crazy. And I said to them what I'm basically saying to you guys, that I think that it's hilarious and that this is learned from Dungeons and Dragons. And my superiors, the ones who were supervising me for this job, knew exactly what I was talking about and started making me, but hey, where's the Gru? Where's the... They were all telling me, hey, where's the dragon on this list? And we had a fun, and of course that job would get done, it was a 3-day job, that one got done as well. And so I'm grateful for that, because even though my sketches were extremely crude, let's be honest, it was better than nothing, and nothing is what they had previously, and I'm sure they could just use those as a template for... I was later told after they did the upgrade for all the stuff that I had sketched out, that 100% of my work that I provided them was entirely the basis for their procedures for when they finally did the upgrades for the network. And everything that I had sketched out, while it was extremely crude, was very accurate. And very accurate. And they were so grateful for that, because then they knew where to go and what to do. And while there were certainly hiccups when they did the transition, the next, they were fixed within a day or two. So I think that's a pretty funny story. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Keep playing your Dungeons and Dragons. Hopefully you guys can tabletop over Skype or FaceTime or whatever. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Until next time, my name is Maniac with GamingSuccess.net. Take care. Over and out.